Welcome back to another episode of Journey to Life with me, ArletteJones-Lawson, and my daughter and co-host, Constance Fields. This is part 3 of our 3-part series, The Black Woman Experience in America. This is our final episode in honor of Black History Month. Our topics today will focus on stereotypes of Black women in television and film, natural Black hair journey, and the Crown Act. We are honored today, again, with our special guest, Blaise, host of 2 YouTube channels, HeyItsMeB and The Secret Life of B. Welcome back, Blaise.
Hey guys, thanks for having me yet again. I'm very much excited to get into today's topic, and I can't wait to end this whole series with a bang.
Well, welcome, 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 welcome. And now, new to our discussion today is our special guest, Blaire. Blaire has her bachelor's degree in art education and is a talented fine artist and face painter. Her artwork can also be found on the front and back cover of my book, There's More Beyond Surviving, Journey to Life. Welcome, Blaire.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for having me, and I'm excited to hear about the topics today.
Well, we're certainly glad you both are here with us to dive into the Black women's hair journey. It is such a wide spanning topic, and covering all of the bases that we are going to, this is going to be a really interesting conversation. So I want to talk first about the stereotypes of Black women in television and film, specifically when it comes to hair and stereotypes in general. But there's an article on bustle.com that talked about the 7 unconscious biases that still affect Black women today. And in the article, it talked about how Black women are often judged in real life based on media stereotypes. And those can look like things that came from movies or TV, even television interviews or what have you. But there's this pervasive stereotype that Black women find ourselves in as portrayed by the media. There's a race blogger and MTV presenter named Franchesca Ramsey, who wrote that the limited portrayals of Black women in TV and film have long been relegated to a selection of repetitive, one-dimensional stereotypes. It lacks any kind of representation, and it impacts how we are viewed off screen as well. So some of the points that Ramsey made were the Jezebel, who is considered the over-sexualized woman, the mammy, who she pointed out was often seen as the unattractive, darker skin toned, maybe a maid or a slave in some portrayals as well. And then there's the sassy Black friend, and that one is really self-explanatory. I mean, the attitude, the roll in the neck, they all have their roots in this racist depiction and treatment of Black women during the Jim Crow era and beyond, honestly. And it still shows up in mainstream media today. Now, things are getting a lot better. Our representation is getting a lot better, but those stereotypes can still be seen in a lot of different aspects of media. And Black women, are often left in this space of, for lack of a better word, being left on the shelf when it comes to things like online dating because of these stereotypes. And there's something called OkCupid. I haven't been in the dating world for a long time, long time. But there's a website called OkCupid that actually did do a study over the span of 6 years. And they found that in 2014, that Black women were the least desired group on that website, according to its users. So I guess you can now say what your preference is, And I don't know since 2014 if that's changed, but I'm curious to know what you all feel about this stereotype and how it affects you all as Black women in society?
Yeah, I find it interesting when you were mentioning the different stereotypes, because I do feel like there's been different eras. You know, with the Jezebel, that was during a lot of black exploitation films, and then you know the Mammy was like Gone with the Wind, and like I feel like any film that centers around slavery or like civil rights movement, maybe there might be some Mammy characters. And then you have the sassy Black friend, which I feel like every teen TV show has had that trope. Like one of my favorite shows growing up was Good Luck Charlie, and the best friend was like the Black sassy best friend who had all the funny one-liners. We also did forget a trope too. It's called the Sapphire trope.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah, it's usually known as Angry Black Woman, but like I think of Rochelle from Everybody Hates Chris. She was always angry, but also like there's, you know, different stereotypes as well. I feel like I want to mention this person. He's very successful and did a lot for the Black community in terms of getting Black women and Black creatives work. But, you know, we can't deny there's been some negative stereotypes portrayed by his work. And this person is Tyler Perry. And Medea is actually a mixture of two tropes. So she has the sapphire trope, but also the look of the Mammy. And I think the reason why people don't realize this is because this character is so successful and like popular with not only the Black audience, but also like the average white audience as well. I mean, it's a very likable character. But I think these types of portrayals do have a negative effect on us in general, because people expect us to act like that in real life. And whenever you ask somebody about their preferences for dating, a lot of them say, oh, I don't date Black women because they're just too much for me, or they're like they're too sassy, or they have an attitude. And like, where do you think that comes from? You know,
Right.
Stereotypes.
I agree. And you know what? It's interesting that you bring up Tyler Perry and the Medea characters. And I must say, you know, I find and have found the Medea character to be very entertaining because it's over the top. And it's not like, you know, anything like we really are. So it's so over the top that it's like funny. But there is like a hidden undertone to it. And I remember back years ago when Medea's character, the Tyler Perry's movies were becoming like really popular and mainstream. I remember that Spike Lee had a huge problem with the character. He felt like that character, you know, was, you know, kind of setting things back as far as what people thought of the African-American female. And so, you know, he and Tyler Perry kind of were at odds there for a while. Now, they've in recent years have, you know, kind of mended their relationship or mended, you know, their feelings, I guess, talked it out, worked it out. So he doesn't like speak against it anymore. But also Tyler Perry is kind of moving away from shows that are like, or movies that are like the Medea movies. So, you know, and this may have been his way of, you know, getting his foot in the door to be able to do what he wanted to do all along.
Yeah, and I'm curious, Blaire, what you think about this too, because I was thinking about, you know, writers and how a lot of the characters, a lot of these stereotypes were written by non-Black writers. And now you have a lot more African-American writers that are in the actual writing room that are putting out stories and narratives, and they can shift the portrayal, but it can still seep in some aspects. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I was thinking that too, that there's always some type of like way to like hint it in through movies and TV shows. And it feels kind of like a letdown. They know that this is still a stereotypical thing that happens and is showcased all around the world. And I feel like there's a way to, you know, entertain the audience without having to do all of that. And they also are aware, since they are African American, they know how it is for women and even men, that women I feel like are more, stereotyped in that way. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of a letdown.
Do you think that it's like they're thinking from the aspect of the cells? Like if we were talking about like Black writers and that Black writers that do use some of these stereotypical, portrayals, do you think they're coming from an aspect of this just has to sell? Or do you think that some of them are standing more on integrity and saying, you know what, I'm going to tell these stories the way that they need to be told and not the way that historically it's been told?
I definitely think that there's been a large portion of media that has sold on punching down on Black women, and the writers know that. So you have Mad TV that had a big caricature of the angry Black woman, and then there's a lot of YouTubers that got their whole career start on pretending to be the angry Black woman trope, and then even dressing up like a girl. I just feel like it's better now that we're moving away from that, because writers are writing with integrity and not wanting to sell out the Black woman just for a check,
Yeah, I think it takes courage on their part, and especially when they're, when they're just starting out and they haven't been established. I think that it does, the bottom line financially is the thing that they're trying to push. So I do think that, that is a major concern. And they're not as much concerned about, the representation being, one with integrity. I think that might come after they've had some successes and can kind of push back on it, and then speak out a little bit more. I think that's when we see more African-American writers, producers, directors, pushing for more authenticity.
I feel like that's the case too, where there's a lot of writers that feel like they need to, talk about this stuff, talk about all the stereotypes and everything in their content in order to thrive in the entertainment world. But it's not, this isn't what they have to do. I would love to see, something empowering about our culture and everything. Although, I just wish more artists and writers, I wish they would think about that more before posting stuff like that.
That's why we need more Black women writers in the room as well. You can tell, yeah.
Yeah, with people like Quinta Brunson and Issa Rae, more movement of Black women getting the pen in hand or getting behind the keyboard and typing out these stories, the more we can start to shift the narrative outside of media and in society as how we want to be viewed as our true authentic selves.
Okay, so now let's move on to the topic of colorism. An article by Atlanta Black Star revealed that positive portrayals of Black women on big screen and TV have increased, but colorism issues still remain. And so, Black representation has come a long way in TV and film, but the journey still has to begun. And so a study conducted by Gina Davis Institute on Gender and Media focused on Black women and girls in the entertainment industry in 2019, found that while Black character portrayal in media has increased, colorism is still proving to be an issue. Now, in this study, it reveals that Black women and girls, which represent 6.5% of the US population, but represent 6.1% of characters and 5.7% of leading characters in 2019 films, found that Black women were more likely to be seen as leaders and workers in science, technology, engineering, and math, and were more likely to be depicted as smarter than the white or Asian or Latinx characters. However, 80% of the Black female characters were light skinned or medium skin toned, and only 19% of the Black leading ladies in the past decade were dark skinned. And so this is a pattern, and not only is it with the skin color, but if you have a Black character on a show or a movie, more than likely there were to have European standard hairstyles. And it's only, in recent years where we see shows like Insecure, Blackish, and Dear White People, where the characters have more natural hairstyles like locks and afros. But I really do want to talk about that because I do feel like while portrayals have definitely gotten better for Black women in mainstream TV and media, I just feel like there's still an issue with colorism. And while it's nice to see Black women on screen, it is disheartening to see that they only really are wanted if they are racially ambiguous or light-skinned. And I can't help but think of like that one show, My Wife and Kids, where they replaced the sister in the first season with a lighter skin actress. And like all the women in the show are light skinned, and then all the men in the show are medium and darker skinned.
Yeah, that colorism is such a polarizing, it's a polarizing issue in our community as it is. When you add in media portrayals of like the characters that different skin tones are portraying, like the actresses that are getting to play these roles, it's blatant in your face. Like with The Harder They Fall, for instance, that was a really phenomenal movie. Zazie Beetz is her name, I think. She played a character who was an actual person, or the actual person was a darker skin tone. And they did not cast a darker skin tone actress. They cast her, and she's lighter. And so that was an issue for a lot of people. And I know that there have been other movies that have come out where people have been up in arms because it's like, yo, you got this, you got a wide array of beautiful brown skin tones that you could choose. And in order to be the leading actress that is portrayed in a positive light or has a love interest or something like that, you have to be a certain skin tone, and it's just not okay.
And one of the things that has seems like it's become like a pattern for Black actresses that that are like sporting natural hair is that when they're in the work environment, they have wigs on with straight hair. And then when they come home, some of the shows are showing them taking their wig off and having their natural hair. And while I do appreciate them showing the natural hair, to me it sends a message that we should be ashamed somehow of showing our natural hair in the workforce or in public. And like for instance, Viola Davis in How to Get Away with Murder. I loved her character, and she's darker skinned, beautiful woman. And so I am very, very proud of them, making her the lead character in this. But if you notice, during the day while she's doing her lawyering, she's got a wig on. And, a lot of times the wig is a straight wig. And she sports her natural hair, in real life, she sports her natural hair. And then kind of midway, I guess, it seemed like it was midway through all of the seasons, they started showing her, without the wig, not in public and not representing any clients, but in the home environment, she was sporting her natural hair. So although they are like showing that, that we have natural hair and we're embracing our natural hair, we're not, it's sending a message that we're not comfortable with showing our natural hair in society. And I think that's like a dual message.
Yeah, I feel like they should show more of our natural hair in the media because it's beautiful hair. All different textures and lengths and everything. Yeah, I feel like they're just not aware of how we are comfortable with, seeing this stuff. We want to see this stuff. We want to embrace it and everything. And I don't know, I think they just feel like it's not as professional to look at, or, you know, or even to hire people that look like us, I guess. But yeah, I feel like they should, I feel like it's the writers or the whoever's casting the people, I feel like it's on them to really decide whether, you know, who's gonna be the main character and everything. They should really focus on darker complexions as well as natural hair.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it might make them a little uncomfortable. The advertisers that support these shows and movies, I think it might make them a little uncomfortable if they show a darker skinned Black woman with natural hair. It's like they don't feel comfortable with it being both dark skin and natural hair. Like you can be light skinned with natural hair, they're okay with it. But not so much if you're darker skinned. It almost sends the message that it's too Black to be acceptable.
It's like the curl pattern, which gets into like good hair versus bad hair. Like that whole thing is also very polarizing, or has historically been very polarizing in the Black community. But Blaire mentioned about the workforce, and I know that that's a topic we're definitely getting ready to get into.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And also Blaire had mentioned casting. I just want to get into Constance actually had brought this up earlier, but the movie Nina with Zoe Saldana, there was a huge controversy a few years ago because, as we know, Zoe is Afro-Latina and, you know, pretty light skinned. And so for this role, they had to not only darken her skin, but they put on a prosthetic nose, and it was a mess, honestly. She's
atrocious.
Apologized. Yeah. But like a lot of people had issue with her even taking the role because she's not in the position where she needs to take every role. She has, you know, enough standing to where she can reject. And that's why I appreciate actresses like Zendaya. Like Zendaya is light skinned and mixed, but she's been on the record saying that she would never take roles that are meant for dark skinned actresses because she knows how hard it is to get work in the industry.
Right. And there are talented actresses of every complexion, but talented actresses that are darker skin complexion that need to be at the forefront as well. Like there's an equal playing field here. We're all Black women. We're all telling our stories.
I'm going to move on into talking about the natural hair journey. Our natural hair journey is African-American women. There's an article in dailygestor.org entitled How Natural Black Hair at Work Became a Civil Rights Issue. The article reads, anti-Black hair sentiment on US soil has existed for centuries. In the 1700s, enslaved women who worked in the fields usually covered their hair in head rags due to the harsh demands of their work. Enslaved African Americans who worked in the big house, however, sometimes mimicked the hairstyles of their enslavers, either by wearing wigs that had become popular during that era or shaping their kinky hair to imitate them. In cities like New Orleans, however, where free Creole women of color donned elaborate hairstyles that displayed their kinks and coils with an air of regality, the city implemented laws, the Tignon laws, that required these women to wear a tignon. And a tignon is a scarf or a handkerchief over their hair to signify that they were members of the slave class, regardless of whether they were free or enslaved. The end of the 19th century saw the invention of the hair straightening comb, which would be used to tame Black hair. Madam C.J. Walker, a Black woman, popularized the comb and texture to signal middle class status. As a result, Walker became the first female African-American millionaire. Although some historians have lauded Walker's business acumen, others have shielded her for perpetrating the idea that straight hair leads to social and economic advancement. For better or worse, she offered Black women an avenue for increased societal acceptance in an era where songs mocked the hair texture of African Americans comparing it to wool and often displaying it as nappy. What do y'all think about that?
The article, some of the terminology that was used in the article, I just have a reaction to, like the word kinky. If you say kinky, coily, it's different, but when you like specify like, oh, the slaves had kinky hair, and they had to cover it up or with wigs or what have you, it just is sad. There is something that I do want to point out about slavery that I found out recently, is that Black women actually used to braid, and I want to say this was as they were going, like trying to escape slavery, but they would like braid messages into the hair. They would also braid bits of rice and grain into their hair so that they could have food on the journey when they were escaping. And that is just such a testament to the power of our hair. It's not just, cover it with a wig or straighten it here or whatever. There is so much power in our locks.
I agree. The article further states that the first natural hair discrimination cases wouldn't appear until the next decade. In the 1976 case of Jenkins versus Blue Cross Mutual Hospital Insurance, the United States Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit upheld a race discrimination lawsuit against an employer for bias against afros. The appeals court agreed that the workers were entitled to wear afros under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. Now, while afros were technically allowed in the workplace, the social pressure to emulate Eurocentric hair permeated American society, impacting Black women's hair grooming decisions. Assimilation became more dominant in the late 1970s and throughout the 1980s. The 1980s and 1990s ushered in more Black women sporting pressed or permed hair, thanks to the prevalent hair care ads on TV and in magazines that encouraged Black women to alter the texture of their hair. My grandmother is a beautician and who turned 100
today. Happy birthday, Grandma Jessie.
Happy birthday, Grandma Jessie. Is a beautician, and she actually used to do something called blowouts because my hair was thick and heavy, and so to get an afro, she would have to like try to blow it out and tease it to get the afro, and it still would like fall. And I'd still kind of have this like afro dome, and it would kind of have this center that just kind of laid flat. And, but I didn't care because I wanted to sport the afro because, all my friends were sporting afros, everybody was sporting afros except our parents. They weren't sporting afros. They were sporting pressed hair or permed hair.
Yeah, I know that music and television and film definitely played a role in pushing out hairstyles into our culture. Yeah,
I agree. I also wonder if there's a connection with like Black exploitation films kind of going out of style, because you only ever saw like Black women with afros in those types of movies, and then now like it's actually insane to me how you can have a whole movement where like natural hair is completely accepted in the 70s to like now everyone's almost getting relaxers and pressing their hair. So I wonder how that happened. Like, was it the ads? Was it the TV? Was it a mixture of all?
I feel like it could have been a mixture of all. Because like if you're seeing it everywhere, you're gonna want to have to straighten your hair, you want to perm your hair and everything. It's not, I don't know, you'd feel like out of place if you were the only one with natural hair and everybody else had straight hair. So I I feel like it was a mixture of both, definitely.
And
I
you
agree.
touch on a point, Blaire, that feeling out of place, because I can remember, you know, going to school and being like, oh, everybody has straight hair, and you know, mine gets all like puffy and stuff when it's hot and whatever, you know, and there was this pressure that even at a young age, I felt I needed to have my hair straight for it to be manageable or to look a certain way or to look beautiful. And I think that's the message that was being pushed out. You are beautiful if your hair is this way. And that is a message that translated throughout the years, even into, you know, when we talk about the 2000s, carrying on with that article, moving into the 2000s, there was a second wave of the natural hair movement. And there was a huge social media and cultural shift around talking about Black women and hair. And it caused a lot of Black women to abandon, you know, the perm, the relaxer. Lots of things came out about the relaxer in recent years and how, you know, it could cause damage to our bodies. But going into the 2000s, people, I think, were really wanting that natural root, getting to their root. There was a movie by that was directed by Regina Kimball called My Nappy Roots: A Journey Through Black Heritage. And it traced the history and politics around natural hair in the United States. And this, a lot of people felt like raised the consciousness of the African-American community with our hair. That was 1 year before Chris Rock came out with Good Hair. But I felt like Good Hair was less a film of empowerment and more showing the economics of buying like perms and weaves. But that movie was controversial. I don't know if y'all remember how controversial it was, but it was controversial because of the title itself, Good Hair. And it's like, you know, we talked about it a little bit earlier, this good hair versus bad hair. I don't know if you ladies ever had this experience, but I know that throughout my life, multiple times people would say to me when I was younger, oh, you have such good hair. Oh, your hair is so good. And I was like, I didn't know. I was like, oh, thank you. You know, thank you. But now that I reflect on it, I'm like, that's super offensive. Like, your hair is good too. And what makes hair good or bad, you know? So yeah, I don't know what your feelings are about that, but those films specifically prompted many Black women to be natural. And on YouTube and other social media platforms, women felt empowered to create YouTube channels around their natural hair, and showing their hair care journeys, showing their hair tutorials and connecting to other women. And many Black women were learning for the first time how to truly care for their natural hair, how to find products that work, how to find hairstyles that work. You know, not having to just rely on putting on a wig or even a sew-in, you know, just being able to, I mean, maybe learning how to do box braids or learning how to do finger coils or whatever. But there's a lot of different tutorials on the YouTube community that promoted natural hair acceptance among Black women. And so when we talk about that, before I get into some of the social media posts around Black hair, what have you all found to be your experience when you talk about good hair versus bad hair or natural hair?
I had to, I think, be drugged over to the natural hair movement. I'm mixed gray, and I actually am grayer than my mom was when she passed 10 years ago. And I've always had a perm ever since I was 18. And from then on, I was able to perm my hair, and I had, you know, relatively long hair. And if it wasn't permed or pressed, people couldn't notice how long my hair was. And there was this stereotype at the time that Black hair was short. You know, Black women couldn't grow long hair. And so at that time, I was really impacted by what other people thought and their perception of me. And so permed hair allowed people to see the length of my hair. And so I felt more accepted with people appreciating the length of my hair in its straightness. And so with the mixed gray thing and permed hair, I thought, okay, I'm not coloring my hair. So I'm natural in that it's mixed gray, but I don't know if I can go all the way to natural coils and mixed gray. That might be a bridge too far for me.
Did that make you think about the good hair versus bad hair? Like, was that something that was in the back of your mind?
It did, because I wasn't sure how my hair was going to look in its natural state. It hadn't been natural for, Lord, 30 years, 35 years, you know? And so I wasn't sure how my gray was going to take to natural hair. And then what scared me probably the most was the big chop, you know, because that cut away all of the perm, and that just left me with, you know, natural hair. And, you know, and so when you don't know how your hair is gonna react to going natural, and then you cut away the perm, you know, that was a comfort in that. And so there was a part of me that was like terrified. Oh, you mean I have to cut it off? I mean, I have to like cut it down, you know, and and so it was quite a decision. And my daughters, you know, they all really pushed me to taking that plunge. You know, it's been, July will be 3 years. And I like my natural hair, I do. And you know, and every now and then, you know, I'll pull it out. So, you know, and somebody will make a comment, you know, I like how short your hair is. And I'll, you know, oh, it's not really short, but yeah.
That shrinkage is something else. But
yeah, I'm sorry. I would pull my hair and do it like at work, they'd be like, wow, your hair is like really, really long. I didn't realize it was gonna be that long. I'm like, yeah, it just shrinks. That's, I mean, just what happens. But
do you ever do that on purpose? Like, oh, I want you to see.
I do sometimes. I'm like, but
yeah, back to the topic on like good hair versus bad hair.
Yeah,
I feel like the idea of what good hair is solely based off of like looks. Like, because to me, good hair means your hair is healthy. That's it. But they think, or C hair, they think that's bad hair automatically when it's not true at all. Like, but they think anything that's like a tighter curl or not as long, they consider it bad hair. And I just found that so weird. But you know, growing up, we were 90s. Well, I'm a 90s kid, but like I only remember the 2000s. But I never remembered watching like perm commercials. But we always like grew up having perms in like middle school and high school. But I feel like not seeing perm commercials on TV was like helpful for me, because I didn't grow up with the idea that like, okay, I have to have relaxers in my hair to have good hair. I mean, we still had relaxers, but that wasn't our choice. But like, you know, I wonder, did you guys growing up in like the 80s, the 70s, the 90s, did you ever see relaxer commercials?
A lot of relaxer commercials. Dark and Lovely was the thing that got me over, you know, because some of the perms were, when the perms initially came out, they were lye-based perms. And there was this huge danger in lye staying in your hair for too long, because it would just melt your hair, technically, just break your hair completely off. And it was really harsh on your scalp. And, you know, depending on, you know, if you had played with your hair or scratched your hair in some way, depending on if you've done something like that, and you get that perm with the lye, I mean, you were on fire. And you forced yourself to take it because you wanted your hair to be as straight as it could be. Because of course, if it gets washed out too early and it's not straight enough, you got to wait another 6 weeks, 6-8 weeks before you can get it permed again. So, you know, and then, so knowing how harsh those perms were, when perms like Dark and Lovely came out with their commercials, they emphasized that it wasn't lye-based, and also that there were healthy components to it that that could leave your hair straight and healthy. Although personally, repeated use, actually, I found my hair more damaged over time. My hair now, I think, is in its healthiest state since 35, you know, almost 40 years ago.
My mother-in-law actually had shared a story with me where she said she had used some kind of relaxer. I don't know where she got it from. I don't know what brand it was, but it burned her hair off twice. So she did it once. She got jacked up from it. Then she went back and got another one and got jacked up. You talk about the lye versus the no lye. Like, I didn't remember seeing any commercials about relaxers, but I knew the Dark and Lovely, Just for Me, you know, all those things marketed to us were in the stores. But the no lye, I remember being like, oh, okay, I know instinctively because I've heard that if you feel it burning, then you know it's working. So just like sit there until you feel it burning, and then you can wash it out. So that speaks to what you were saying, Mom, about that burning sensation. And there was lots of stories that were coming out, I know in the 2000s specifically, like the 2010s, talking about how Black children were being treated with their hair and being discriminated against. In 2017, there was a preparatory academy in Monteverde, Florida, that asked a Black teenage girl to change her natural hair because it violated the school's dress code. And in 2018, there was a middle school student in Gretna, Louisiana, who was actually removed from the school due to her choosing to have her hair braided in extensions. So there's a lot that we could talk about when it comes to our hair in school and how, you know, they came up with these dress codes that are like, oh, your hair can't be like this, or, you know, this is considered to be an okay hairstyle, an appropriate hairstyle for you to have in school where it's not distracting. Okay, how is my hair distracting you from learning? You know? So let's talk about our hair journey then. You know, Mom, you shared a bit about yours, and you can definitely expound upon the things that you shared. But who wants to go first? Like, what was it like for you before you got a relaxer? What was it like after you got it? And what was it like when you decided to transition into having actual your curls again?
I would say, like, I'm interested in hearing your story first, because we all transitioned after you did.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so I remember having pretty long hair growing up. Grandma Jessie used to straighten it with a hot comb. Mom did her best with keeping it, you know, braided and whatnot. There was a time when I thought I could do my hair myself, and I never combed to the root, and I just remembered it getting kind of matted and me being frustrated. But I want to say maybe I was like 9 or 10. I went away for the summer to visit my dad, and one of my aunts put a relaxer in my hair. And my mom was furious. She was so mad. And that meant I had to keep getting relaxers. And my hair was never as long. It was never as full. And around, I don't know, around the time that I had my first child, I got it cut really short. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna rock this short hairstyle and see what happens. But the body in it was so flat that I just wasn't happy. So I started to transition, and it took maybe a year and a half for me to have enough new growth that I felt confident enough to cut it. And I did the big chop. Don't ask me what year. It feels like 2016, but I don't know. But I felt confident enough around that time to do the big chop, and I just never looked back. I remember being nervous that my hair was going to look super short. And to be honest, when I look back at pictures, it did that first day look like a Q-tip. But but once I learned like what products I could try and whatnot, I started to see the curls come in. Little hairstyles I would try, 2-strand twists. I remember when it got long enough to actually do 2-strand twists. And now it's pretty long. I get it straightened like by a blowout, or what do they call it? I guess a blowout, or a silk press.
Oh, yeah.
I get it silk pressed maybe once a year just to get a trim or to check the length. But I'm happy with the decision to let the relaxer go. And I know a lot of women are going back to relaxers, and that's okay too. Like, don't think we're like bashing relaxers, but it just didn't work for me personally.
Yeah, seeing you transition into natural hair definitely influenced my decision, because one, it wasn't my decision to have relaxers in the first place. I have a similar story to you. So as far as I remember, I've always had straight hair, and I wasn't against going natural or having straight hair. I just was like, I want to try something different, because when we went off to college, I was like, I'm not doing nothing with my hair. Why am I sitting on the floor getting relaxers every few months, literally in pain with this flat iron, and I'm like literally doing the same hairstyle to my hair every single day. Like, what's the point? So I was like, and also my hair is very thin, so when it's flat, there's like no body. So I'm like, you know what, let me try something different. And so it did take like a year and a half for me to have enough hair to do the big chop. But I think we got the big chop on 21st birthday, and so ever since then, it's just been a journey of like trying out different products and trying different hairstyles. And I honestly feel like I've done more with my hair as a natural than I've ever done with relaxed hair. And I feel like I've had more fun with my hair, and I feel like I'm actually taking care of my hair, because back when it was relaxed, I wasn't really washing it as often. I wasn't trimming it. I didn't care at all, really. It was just there.
Yeah, I have a similar experience with Blaise too. I don't really remember when I got it relaxed. I just remember, that our grandma took us to get it relaxed, and our mom was pretty angry at our grandma for that. But yeah, I've always remembered having permed hair, and I never thought about having natural hair until college. And I wasn't like scared about it or anything. I just was like, curious what my curls would look like and everything. I wasn't expecting, I didn't expect the transition phase to be that as hard as it was. It was kind of hard.
You ever look back at your transition hairstyles and you're like, geez, I went out and look like that?
Yeah. Well, see, I don't remember specific transition hairstyles that I did, except for I used to try to recreate this like wet, wavy curl look. Mm-hmm. So I would like twist it and try to like braid out, but like it looked like I put a bunch of gel on my hair and made it wavy on purpose.
But I went to wearing scarves on my hair, covering it for, gosh, I want to say I did that maybe for 5 or 6 months, because I wanted, when I did the big chop, for it to be longer. And when it was long enough that I thought I was going to be comfortable with the big chop, and then I actually got the big chop, I announced it the day before I went to go get the big chop. Hey, y'all gonna see me. I'm gonna come in tomorrow. I'm not gonna have a scarf on because I'm I'm doing the big chop. I'm transitioning. Of course, I had to explain what the big chop meant because people don't automatically know that that means you're cutting away all your perm hair and going completely natural. And one thing that I got that I thought was really funny was, oh, I'm sure it's going to be so pretty. It'll be like Halle Berry. And like, we have different grades of hair, you know, and not all of us, when we do the big chops, hair is going to look like Halle Berry.
Yeah.
You know, because not all of us are mixed race. You know, I mean, we're a mixture of a whole lot of things, but not all of us are biracial. Even, you know, even lighter skin. Not all lighter skin people are biracial. Mm-hmm. And our hair is not gonna react in the same way. And so I remember when I got the big chop, I was like, oh my God, my hair does not look like Halle Berry's. But, you know, so I had to like get brave and be comfortable. Yeah, but it took a while to walk in my skin with natural hair. It took a while.
So what's some of y'all's favorite protective hairstyles?
With my natural hair, I actually have to do more to it. Like it takes me, you know, I might do it once a week, but it takes me time to do my hair. Now it'll hold up for a whole week in my protective styles, but it does require a little more effort to you know, to take really good care of my hair. And I don't know.
But your hair feels healthier though, don't it?
It's absolutely healthier. But it does require, you know, it requires some effort.
Do you have a go-to hairstyle now that you all prefer?
I do. I prefer, you know, just taking smaller chunks of my hair and just, you know, kind of smoothing it out and letting it go and letting it bounce into its natural curl. But I do know that on one head is not the same grade of hair. Like the things I can do to the back of my hair that just bounce right into curls, the front of my hair, the sides of my hair don't react that same way. So I have to like do some coils to, you know, around my finger to get it to like, okay, go on and do what you know to do. So it doesn't react in the same way, which is really weird, you know, that you have different textures in different sections of your hair.
I'm glad I mastered the wash and go last year. That's literally what I do every single week now. But in terms of the style, I like the half up, half down, or like in two ponytails type of thing.
Mm-hmm. I just keep it the same. Usually I just keep it like this. I mean, it would be nice to try new hairstyles. I just not sure if I would perfect it well. Like I would have to try and test it out first. So.
Yeah, I have not perfected the wash and go. My hair gets very frizzy and it doesn't move. And I just have to figure out the products I need for it to work for me. But like Mom said, there's different parts of our hair that don't act the way the other parts of our hair do. And nobody told me that before I embarked on this journey. So I'd be like, why is this part of my hair wavy and this part is bone straight and this part is coily? Like you gotta, you know. So I do a lot of 2-strand twists. And then when I get really tired of twisting it, I'll put it up in a ponytail like this. And it'll be in a high ponytail for a little bit until it's time to wash it.
Great. Let's talk about where we are now. So in 2006, the EEOC issued its Compliance Manual on Race and Color Discrimination, which details guidelines around what constitutes discrimination based on physical characteristics in the workplace. The manual protects against employment discrimination based on a person's physical characteristics associated with race, such as a person's color, hair, facial features, height, and weight. And the manual states that employers can impose neatness and grooming standards as long as racial differences are taken into account and the rules are applied equally across racial lines. And so you can't, for example, discriminate against somebody that has an afro. You know, I'm also pretty sure this also applies to people who wear hijabs as well. And so I'm interested to hear on what you guys think about this, you know, idea that we have to make sure that the standard applies to everyone and not just single out a certain culture or race.
When you talk about hair discrimination and the terminology around that. I mean, I think the way it's worded is fine. I think that there are people who choose to dye their hair purple, for instance, and come to work. And people were like, no, that's not work appropriate. I think there's a difference between that and wearing our hair naturally washed and gold, you know, or wearing bantu knots or something like that, that speaks to a heritage and versus just being like, oh, I'm gonna tie dye my hair today and you have a problem with that. And you talked about the Crown Act. And so that is, you know, the kind of the last section that we're going to talk about today, because the Crown Act, for those of you listening who don't know, it stands for Creating a Respectful and Open World for Natural Hair. It actually passed in the House, but the Senate rejected it. So federally, it's dead, basically, because we have a new Congress now. So, however, on the state level, it's passed in a few states, and I'll mention that in a second. But a couple of things I wanted to highlight about the Crown Act is that throughout United States history, society has used, in conjunction with skin color, hair texture, and hairstyle to classify individuals on the basis of race. So Congress found that, and they found that an example would be routinely people of African descent are deprived of educational and employment opportunities because they are adorned with natural or protective hairstyles in which hair is tightly coiled or tightly curled or worn in locks, cornrows, twists, braids, bantu knots, or afros, which is some of the stuff we just talked about. They also said as recently as 2018, the United States Armed Forces had grooming policies that barred natural or protective hairstyles that servicewomen of African descent commonly wear, and that described these hairstyles as unkempt. And I just want to put a pin in that word, unkempt, because that is a trigger word. I don't know how y'all feel about it, but like when somebody says, oh, this person's hair, this Black woman's hair is unkempt because it's natural, bothers me. It really bothers me. I know someone who shared with me that at her place of employment a while ago, she had decided to wear her hair, you know, naturally out, and was told she looked like a character on a TV show whose hair was like, he got stuck his finger in a socket, you know, and so to feel emboldened enough to make comments like that, it does a lot to a person's psyche. It does a lot to their self-esteem. And so the word unkempt implies that we don't take care of ourselves because our hair is not to your liking. What are your thoughts about that?
It also speaks to us being too lazy to do our hair, and you know, and it actually attacks our self-worth, you know, because those people attach our abilities to their perception of what our hairstyle means to them.
And going back to like what you were saying earlier about how it takes you longer and more effort to do your hair. Imagine you spent the whole morning doing your hair. At night you set it up so that you can like make it look nice for the morning, and then someone called your hair unkempt and you spent hours on it. No. I'd be so mad.
Triggered.
Yeah. People don't realize how triggering that sounds, and like I guess they don't see it in our point of view, but it really is offensive. They need to work on that.
You know, they don't ask enough questions about, you know, how we take care of our hair. But then you have people that want to know, well, goodness, why does your hair look like that? I mean, you
Mhm.
know, and that's a little different.
Or how
You know,
often do you wash it? Like,
Yeah.
oh, I wash it like once a week or once every 2 weeks. What? You
Yeah.
know?
I will say something interesting about this Crown Act. I noticed reading the comments online from like white people. They're like, well, why does this have to be a law? Like, why does this have to be something we care about? Like, this is a waste of time. And I'm just like, y'all don't even understand like where we're coming from. Like, to you, this might be a useless thing to worry about, but to us, this is affecting our work lives and stuff.
Yeah, it really is. So in 2018, continuing on with this, the United States Armed Forces did rescind these policies and recognize that this description perpetuated derogatory racial stereotypes. So I'm very thankful that they did that. The United States Armed Forces also recognized that prohibitions against natural and protective hairstyles that African American service women are commonly adorned with are racially discriminatory and bear no relationship to African American service women's occupational qualifications and their ability to serve and protect the nation. And that is a key point, because just because we choose to wear our hair a certain way does not mean that we can't do our job effectively or that we're any less than. We are just as smart, just as powerful, just as strong, and can do our work better than a lot of people.
exactly.
And choose to express ourselves with our hairstyles or the way that we choose to.
Exactly. I think actually it, you know, the freedom to be able to present ourselves in the way that we're most comfortable, I think adds actually, it's like an asset to any company that we're working in, or to the United States government, or to the military forces, because you have somebody that is totally comfortable in their skin, totally comfortable with how they present. And there's not a focus on, I know we talked about code switching, there's not a focus on that. You know what I mean? We get to be our authentic selves. And I think that companies and corporations and our government benefit from people not hiding part of who they are.
For sure. And some of the states that passed the Crown Act, I said I was going to come back to that. First of all, California was the first to pass it. And New York, New Jersey, Maryland, Virginia, Colorado, Washington, Connecticut, Delaware, New Mexico, Nevada, Nebraska, Oregon, Illinois, Maine, Tennessee, and the US Virgin Islands. And I'm not surprised that Georgia's not on there. I'm not surprised that Florida's not on there.
Not surprised.
But I do hope that those states come around and the other states come around as well, because it's an important law to have to protect us.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, and recently, in fact, this past week, Florida's governor announced in a speech that that his plan is to get rid of DEI, diversity, equality, and inclusion. And his mission is to get rid of that in our state. And that to me says that there's not a desire to diversify. There's not a desire for equity, you know, and inclusion. And I think that the thing that frightens me about stances like that is if it went global. So for instance, if you had a president that believed those things, that wanted to wipe out the Black experience, just because it didn't show your race favorably in history, doesn't mean that if you wipe it out, if you prevent people from learning about it or hearing about it, that it somehow changes the past. It doesn't change the past. And, you know, and the only way to, I think, grow and become better is if we embrace who we were, what our ancestors went through. And we're working towards, you know, fixing those things. We're working towards collaboration. We're working towards uniting together in this United States of America.
Correct. So we did a lot of talking about Black hair, stereotypes, the workforce. And I have thoroughly enjoyed this part of this series specifically. I do want to make sure that I point out that while we talked a lot about Black hair and, you know, the importance of it and the magic in it even, Black hair doesn't make you magical, you are magical. So if you don't have hair, if you suffer from alopecia, if you feel like, you know, you have to cover it with a scarf or what have you, it is the magic within you. But we wanted to make sure that we highlighted the Black hair experience. So I hope you take something away from this. Ladies, do you have any parting thoughts?
I wanted to say that I appreciate you mentioning that, but also knowing that if you choose to continue to perm your hair, that magic is still in you.
Sure.
And that's your choice, and it should be respected.
And weaves.
I just want to say I really enjoyed the conversations we had over the past few weeks when it came to recording this, and this was definitely my favorite episode as well. And I just hope that any of you guys listening takes something away from our conversation and looks at the links in the description and just enjoys the rest of your Black History Month.
I'd like to say that this was a really good talk, a really fun talk. I liked hearing everybody's viewpoints on everything, and I would like to say that I hope whoever's watching this took a lot of information from this podcast. And if you have any other thoughts or opinions on things, you can put your comments down below. And that was a good talk.
Thank you all again for joining us for this series. Please, as Blaire said, let us know your thoughts, your comments. Let us know if you had any additional questions for us or anything you would like to hear from us on. We would love to hear from you. So with that, we say enjoy the rest of your day, be blessed, and happy Black History Month.
Happy Black History Month.
History Month.
Bye, y'all.